Hi everyone, Holly and Maya here from Story Imprinting. I'm here with Anne-Marie Hoftailing. Good morning, Anne-Marie. I had to check and see if it was still morning time.
Good morning. Technically it is. Here we are.
At Story Imprinting, we teach great companies and great humans the art and science of storytelling. And I want to talk to you today, Anne-Marie, about something that as soon as I saw these headlines, I was like, oh, Anne-Marie is going to be all over this, as am I. It's about everyone's favorite Silicon Valley co-founder, charlatan, what else shall we call her? Elizabeth Holmes of Theranos. She of Bad Blood fame and countless podcasts, movies, Wall Street Journal articles. And if you're watching this and you don't know who she is, I strongly encourage you to check out the Wall Street Journal's and John Carreyrou's reporting on her specifically. She's the founder of Theranos, which at its apex was the most highly valued company in American business, had this very incredibly storied board, no pun intended, and it was all sort of predicated on nothing. That she had no product, and she's actually currently in trial in federal court up in Northern California regarding sort of the undoing of the company. And so there was this great story in the New York Times today that sort of hones in on all of the stuff that you and I, Anne-Marie, have talked about relating to Elizabeth Holmes over the last few years. And that is the fact that female founders are in Silicon Valley are really living in her shadow when they're going to go raise money.
Yeah, and I think this really comes back to the heartbeat of it's the shadow side of storytelling,
right.
And also very critically, why storytelling is so powerful. If ever there were an example of the power of story, it's Theranos and Elizabeth Holmes. Did she use it for nefarious purposes? Absolutely. Was she a complete charlatan? Absolutely. And make no mistake, it was all done through the crafting of really powerful narrative that she pounded like a drum over and over again. And that's important to us because I think that storytelling can be used in a really powerful, elegant, ethical way. But make no mistake, when you watch the ways in which it's been weaponized, all that does is illuminate just how powerful it is.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, if you're watching again, and you're sort of new to Elizabeth Holmes and the Theranos story, there are still, I'm sure, tons of clips out there on YouTube of her speaking, right? And it didn't matter if she was speaking to a really small group of investors or, keynoting, some world stage. She would tell sort of the same few stories about the company's origin, about its founding, about where it was going, about who it was helping. And it was super tight narrative. And people were completely moved by that. And so my question to you is, for those female founders that are in Silicon Valley and they find themselves sort of like in the shadow of Elizabeth Holmes and sort of the dark side of her storytelling, how do you stand out? How do you differentiate?
I mean, I think that it's, this is just an expression of absolute bias as well. I mean, I don't know that male founders have been held to the same standard of their predecessors who have aired. So I think that it's fascinating to me that because a woman did this, we've decided that all women for this.
All women must be just spinning us a yarn of nothing, right?
Yeah, I mean, that is just really problematic. And I think that that's its own baked in cultural bias that is just profoundly disappointing and perhaps unsurprising. I do think what it does tell you is you have to be incredibly attuned to your own story. You have to be able to somehow within that story weave in your own ethical spine, your own sort of brand identity in a way that is rooted in story and narrative. If you think just avoiding narrative and going in with a pitch deck that is dense with data and information and results is going to turn it around or somehow be the best weapon against story. There's no science that supports that. The neuroscience and social science around storytelling tells us that it still remains the most powerful tool. So I would say I wouldn't not use the tool, I would just figure out how to master it. It's going to be more, not less critical to really internalize your narrative and be able to tell it in a compelling, connected human
Right.
way that makes contact with with your audience and builds habitual trust.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you're totally right about the bias piece too. I mean, the New York Times piece, which I'll link in this video in the description, talks about that too. Like, male founders are certainly not being held to the standard simply because there was a woman in Silicon Valley who told a big fib about what her company was. That doesn't mean, ipso facto that all women are doing that, right? And so I think that the piece itself, in terms of how it was reported, was really stunning to me because as a former reporter, I can say, like, finding female founders who are trying to raise money, willing to go on the record and say this, knowing that the people from whom they are raising the money are reading it, that's a really brave thing, wouldn't you say?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I think that we know, I mean, this is not, news to anyone, or shouldn't be, that women founders struggle, exponentially greater than male founders. That's just absolutely the truth. The money isn't there by any stretch of the imagination. It's minuscule comparatively. And what's interesting to me is, why aren't male founders worried about this? I mean, she was the biggest founder there was. I mean, it's so interesting that it somehow doesn't touch them, as if it shouldn't touch all founders. I mean, to me, that would be more universal. Like, everyone will be scrutinized a little more carefully.
Oh
That,
no.
oh no, it's just going to be women. So it's just a stunning example and more evidence of the bias that exists and why it's so damn hard. And I think these women who are coming forward and sharing their story are doing a service to everyone to shine a light, as well as this reporting, shine a light on this bias and hope that we can expose some of it and change it. It's a slow process. We've been working at it forever. I don't think this alone will change it. I think you're in for a long game. And I think we have to constantly stand up, constantly speak out, constantly report this kind of thing, because I don't think it changes otherwise. It's not just going to organically change for the better good of humanity.
Right, it becomes just kind of like a drop in the bucket. Well, we posted this piece on our LinkedIn and our Facebook. We encourage you to follow us there as well if you're not already doing so. And please let us know if you liked this video, like it. Give us a like, drop us a comment, follow us. We try and post videos several times a week on information that's really directly relevant to what our viewers want to know regarding professional and personal development, and how those two things are intertwined, and of course storytelling. So don't be a stranger. And thank you so much, Anne Marie, as always. It was great to see you.
Thank you, friend.
Take care.